Good afternoon. I'm, as he said, Larry Rasmussen. I'm the IT guy that Ralph said you need to talk to. I've found myself speaking at a number of events before where most everybody's an engineer or a DCS technician. And I found historically we IT guys and the DCS guys haven't had necessarily a great relationship, but we'll see what we can do there. If I'd been speaking to you just a couple of years ago, I would have told you that CF Industries was essentially a fertilizer company whose primary assets were the largest nitrogen fertilizer facility in North America, based in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, roughly halfway between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, right there where hurricanes like to hang out. We also have a 66% economic interest in the largest nitrogen fertilizer plant in Canada, that being in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. Now, let me go ahead and give you a map, a little bit of an idea. We also have one of the largest integrated ammonium phosphate fertilizer plants in North America, and that's in Plant City, Florida, where I'm based. We also have North America's newest phosphate mining facility, which is about an hour south of the phosphate processing facility in Plant City down in Hardy County. We also have an extensive system of terminals and warehouses that you see kind of scattered around the Midwest. We are agricultural fertilizer. You probably don't have our product that you're putting on your front yard, but you got some vegetables in the fridge, and we helped put those there. The only thing you wouldn't see on this map really was that we have a 50% stake in Key Trade Ag, which is a fertilizer trading company based in Zurich, Switzerland. Chemical fertilizer production is highly capital intensive. CF, as one of North America's largest agricultural fertilizer producers recognized early on that structured maintenance could have a significant and positive impact on both operational reliability and on our bottom line. In the 1980s, we developed a powerful maintenance planning and tracking application on the wonderful IBM System 36, and gradually migrated that application to the AS400 at some of our plants. This system had helped manage maintenance activities, but the cost to maintain it and adapt it to our growing business was getting a bit excessive. In the late 1990s, our Florida operations were still running on the System 36 version. They hadn't even moved over to the AS400. And it became apparent that those were not Y2K compatible systems. So we had that trigger event that allowed us to actually look at things and challenge ourselves. I was sent to Florida to form a team. They had to beg me to leave Chicago and stop shoveling snow like I had for so many years and move down here to Florida to form a team to manage the replacement of those systems. After a fairly short review, from my opinion, I came to the conclusion that moving to the AS400 really was not in our best interest. Rather than migrating to it, I recommended the outright replacement of the in-house systems with vendor packages that would lower our total cost of ownership and operation. We did the traditional boring issuing RFPs and inviting everybody to the party. I went to conference after conference to see who was doing what and to find out what the truth was behind all the software packages and whose stuff actually worked and how they were using them. And eventually we ended up implementing the Avantis asset management application. And that choice, and actually the accounting system at that time we had chose to go with also was PeopleSoft, and that formed the foundation for the entire organization following the Florida operation and adopting that as our standard. We also use the Avantis decision support system. We also have their condition monitoring application. All these tools are heavily used to analyze the data that we're collecting for continuous process improvement. The system is designed to automate maintenance planning and tracking activities for approximately, under this group, 50,000 entities, including vessels, pumps, lots of electrical motors. It also helps us manage and analyze our MRO inventory, our procurement on more than 60,000 inventory items in the 4 major manufacturing locations. Now, I say kind of was, I use some confusing terms because in April of 2010, we had a major acquisition. We acquired Terra Industries, which was also a leading fertilizer producer in North America. With that acquisition came pretty much a doubling in size and scope of our operation. The footprint that used to kind of just be those little circles, you see the squares popping up here. That included 5 fertilizer production facilities in the Midwest, basically Port Neal, Iowa, Yazoo City, Mississippi, Woodward, Oklahoma. Just happened to have one in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, right next door to our existing largest plant. So that turned out to be a real nice bonus. As well as one nitrogen facility in Courtright, Ontario. We also acquired an interest in a facility in Trinidad, which gave us access to a different natural gas market. The primary raw material cost in nitrogen fertilizer manufacturing, it's like 90-some% of your cost, cash cost, is natural gas. We also got a 75% interest in a partnership, a facility in Vertiguer, Oklahoma, and an interest in operations in Growhow, UK in the United Kingdom. So as I say, we kind of went from one place. When I joined the company, or actually when the company went from being a co-op, which we were when I first joined the company 15 years ago, we went to being, we went public at, I think the number was at about 800 million. After this merger, we were valued at 8 billion. The assets that we're talking about here, for instance, here in our mining operation, just here in Central Florida, we have 3 of these large drag lines. Again, talk about capital intensive. You don't park one in your driveway. Matter of fact, the bucket for this will scoop up your house and move it away for you. We have 3 of these drag lines in our phosphate mining operation here in Central Florida. They're extremely large, extremely complex. They use lots of electricity, lots of motors. This, as I said, is electric, so there's a great big extension cord that goes out here. And there's an extensive network of mobile equipment then that's involved in hauling the matrix. We actually dig, surface mine the phosphate rock, dump it in a slurry pit, use essentially water cannons to pulverize the matrix. I always thought it'd be kind of fun to maybe be that squirt gun operator, but I saw guys do it, and after about 15 minutes, it looked pretty boring. You pulverize it, and then we pump it back to our beneficiation facility. So there are miles of pumping equipment, miles of piping, and everything out there is essentially moved around on skids because it's got to be mobile. You're going to move an electrical line, and you got to move all the power. You move substations. You're moving it all around. We found that proper maintenance of the piping alone, we routinely roll it, a third of a roll, back a roll, over this way, so that the wear on the pipe is even. That saves tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by maintaining that and treating it to get the maximum life out of it. Likewise, through collection of the data, we were able to analyze the electrical consumption and the flow rates in the pumps to more optimally space the pumps. Fewer pumps means less electricity, lower maintenance costs. Hopefully 3M, nobody's from 3M, and they'll come after and see this mining manufacturing. No. We have roughly a dozen now complex manufacturing facilities. Again, lots of machinery, all requiring ongoing maintenance and care and tender love and care to take and make sure that we're running in peak operating performance and to maintain our uptime. Before we acquired Terra, as I said, we were tracking approximately 50,000 maintenance or production entities in our Vanna system. And now we are pretty close to the 100,000 entity mark with our systems. Each of these entities represents a significant capital investment, and it forms a role and performs a role in producing finished product. We have only the one mine, for instance, that CF itself owns. So if something were to slow down in our production operation and generating rock, then my phosphate processing facility sits idle. That's never a good thing. That's why we also have 3 drag lines as we thought about it. We were down to 2 at one point. We saw one of another competitor have a drag line fall over, and when we convinced the CEO that half of his mine's production throughput could disappear simply with one incident like that, we recognized that that was a risk we couldn't afford to take. But we're finding, obviously, through careful attention to these assets, that there's a lot we can do to produce, and we have been producing, achieving production records, and maintaining safe operating environments. Okay, so I didn't use all 3 M's. I made a different M up there. And the third M is moving, or transportation. We have numerous distribution assets. As I said, we make fertilizer year-round, but when it comes right down to it, agricultural fertilizer is really consumed at 2 times a year, depending on the fall and the spring, depending on the particular geographic location and the crops that they're doing. That's when they're really moving the product out into the fields, when the thaw hits, when it's dried up enough. But we have to make the product year-round, move it out into the appropriate distribution facilities and terminals, warehouse it, store it, and have it ready for when the farmer needs it. When they decide it's dry enough, when they decide it's time, we need to have it there so that they can get it and go. This shot here is a shot of our Plant City complex, as a matter of fact, and you see tends to be a few rail cars on there. We have, on any given day, typically 300 to 400 rail cars on our property at that facility. A lot of them are actually leased or owned fleet that we maintain to make sure that we have a constant flow of the rock between our mine and our facility, or ammonia. We bring ammonia in through the Tampa ammonia terminal and haul it over for use in the production operation. Sulfur, lots of stuff moving constantly. So now that I told you who we are, Let's get on to the reliability management part of it, the real key. I think I probably have stated the almost exclusively obvious here. You can't control what you can't measure, what you don't measure. To me, that's been the key. Asset performance management, reliability management really requires that you capture the data. In our plants over the last several years, I've seen and continue to see just more and more and more instrumentation being used, being collected. We implemented in 1999, we implemented an Aspen historian, which was a choice that we made because I had multiple DCS systems, so I chose a DCS agnostic historian. So we have the data collected now that goes back more than a dozen years for us to analyze and correlate. Maintenance management and cost tracking, again, Avanis allows us to collect tons of data that then we correlate with our historians, our operating data, and our accounting data in a data warehouse. I guess, it's almost, I'll say it again and again, analyze, analyze, analyze is what we've been doing. Ideally, we take the analysis to the next level. You can use data as a forensic analysis tool, and every plant will, but you got to take it to predictive, I think. And Avanis's condition monitoring is an example of that tool that we're looking. I've heard other people talk about leadership, and to me that's another obvious thing. In order to do this, you really have to get buy-in from leadership. Years back, I had a VP hand me a copy of a book about the Mars Pathfinder mission, and I've heard some mentions to NASA programs already this week. That was a faster, better, cheaper initiative. We also had the CEO handed out a book on transformational leadership by John Cotter. All these to challenge that we all had to do something different, that operating business as usual was not going to be acceptable. You had to challenge people to change, to do something different, which is a challenge in a plant where I've got a lot of people that have been there for over 40 years, and they're used to doing things their way. Teamwork and communication is essential. As I said, unfortunately, when things go wrong, I think it's classic for maintenance to blame production, production to blame maintenance, everybody to blame engineering. That's not productive. So again, use of the data to be predictive rather than just as the beating tool afterwards is essential. I was at a conference a few years back, and I heard something that was interesting. How many people flew in here? See, I actually drove across the state. So aren't you glad that the operator of that plane, that pilot, had proper training, has procedures and checklists that they follow on a routine basis? Yet sometimes we, as operators of plants, while we don't have hundreds of people flying in our plant, fail to recognize that that is a very valuable asset. And our operators should be trained and have standard procedures to follow. Because, I've got acid plants. You start and stop these things. That's not good for them. The more consistent you are, the better procedures you follow, the higher your reliability rates will be. Going back a little bit to the concept I said, I had people who had been there for 40 years, so I actually had I think the gentleman from the Department of Energy said, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help type thing. I heard that earlier today. I actually started with our company in a role that had me overhaul the logistics operation of our plant, our facilities. And when I did that, I kind of went in with, I'm here from Long Grove or corporate, and I'm here to help. And that didn't go over well. So when I went to the plants, I learned from that lesson, and we had to do it a little different way. You can see they're kind of hurrying me along here, but that's okay. I just, while I think that, again, the gentleman from the Department of Energy said you can call him, I'd rather go with an email, but if anybody ever has any questions, feel free to call me.